The day I realized I was falling for my CEO, the world tilted in a way I didn't know it could. It happened quietly, in the middle of an ordinary workday, when I watched her walk across the glass-walled conference room with the calm authority of someone who had survived storms no one else could see. She was labeled too old for love by whispers and jokes I pretended not to hear, yet something in the way she carried her past made my chest ache. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unexpected love, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to be felt, not just heard. My name is Aaron Whitman, and I was a junior strategy analyst at a fast-growing tech firm in Seattle, Washington. I was young enough to still believe hard work alone could save you, and old enough to know it usually didn't. The company's success was often credited to its CEO, Margaret Collins, a woman in her late 40s with silver threaded through her dark hair and a reputation for being unapproachable. She'd built the company from a failing startup into a national player after a public divorce that tabloids chewed up and spat out. People said she was married to the job now, that love had passed her by. I repeated those assumptions like armor, because it was easier than questioning why I noticed the softness in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. Margaret ran meetings with precision, but what stayed with me were the quiet moments. Late evenings when the office emptied and she stayed behind, reviewing reports alone under fluorescent lights. I would pass by with my bag slung over my shoulder and see the weariness she never let the board see. It reminded me of my mother after my father died, that stubborn strength that keeps you upright even when your heart wants to fold. I told myself my concern was professional respect, nothing more, even as I found excuses to double-check figures and deliver them to her office personally. The challenge wasn't just the age gap or the hierarchy, though those were heavy enough. It was the unspoken rule that feelings had no place in a building made of glass and ambition. Colleagues joked about Margaret's past, about how she had missed her chance, and each laugh landed like a bruise. I started defending her in small ways, redirecting conversations, changing subjects, feeling foolish for caring so deeply. The more I tried to keep distance, the more the distance closed on its own, like gravity doing what gravity does. Everything shifted during a company retreat in Aspen, Colorado, still within the United States but far from our usual battlefield. The mountains stripped us of our titles. There, Margaret wasn't just the CEO, she was a woman standing on a balcony at dawn, staring at snow-covered peaks with an expression that looked like prayer. I watched from a distance, struck by the loneliness etched into that quiet moment. Later that day, she stumbled during a presentation, not in content, but in confidence, as if the weight of expectations had finally pressed too hard. I stepped in to help, steadying the moment, and saw gratitude flicker across her face. It felt like being trusted with something sacred. Back home in Seattle, the office felt different. Our conversations deepened, still professional, still careful, but threaded with an understanding that made the air hum. She shared pieces of her story in indirect ways, how she had sacrificed friendships for survival, how success sometimes felt like standing alone on a summit with no one to share the view. I shared my own doubts, my fear of becoming invisible in a system that rewards noise. The struggle was constant, a tug-of-war between what felt right and what looked wrong to the outside world. The rumors started anyway, they always do. A lingering glance, a late meeting, a shared ride after a storm. Enough for imaginations to ignite. HR policies loomed like thunderclouds. I considered resigning more than once, convinced that the only way to protect her was to remove myself from her orbit. But each time, I imagined her standing alone again, carrying burdens she never asked for, and my resolve crumbled. Love, I learned, doesn't announce itself with permission slips. The turning point came during a crisis that threatened to undo everything she had built. A data breach hit the company, stocks plummeted, and the board circled like sharks. Margaret absorbed the blame publicly, shielding her team, including me, from the fallout. Watching her take that hit, I felt something break open inside me. I stayed late every night, helping rebuild trust, drafting plans. Standing beside her in the quiet aftermath in those exhausted hours, I saw not an untouchable executive, but a human being fighting for her life's work. When the crisis passed, the board praised her resilience, but the victory felt hollow. She withdrew, walls rising higher than ever. I realized then that loving someone like Margaret meant accepting the cost of her strength. It meant choosing patience when everything in me wanted certainty. I wrote my resignation letter, convinced that letting go was the only honorable choice. Before submitting it, I sat in my car overlooking Puget Sound, wrestling with the idea that love might sometimes ask you to step back, not forward. Fate has a way of interrupting our plans. Margaret announced a company-wide meeting to address the future, her voice steady but heavy. She spoke about rebuilding with transparency, about valuing people over perceptions. Though she never said my name, her eyes found me in the crowd, and in that look was an unspoken plea for courage. I tore up the resignation letter that night, choosing faith over fear, even without knowing where it would lead. Time softened the edges. Boundaries were redrawn with care. Roles clarified, whispers faded into background noise. We didn't rush, we learned to breathe in the space between us. What grew wasn't scandal but partnership. Two people choosing respect before desire. The age difference stopped mattering when weighed against shared values and hard-earned trust. The label "too old for love" revealed itself as a lie people tell when they're afraid of depth. Near the end of this story, I ask you from the heart, if this journey has touched you, if it stirred something tender or hopeful inside, please show your support. Like the video, share it with someone who believes love doesn't expire, and subscribe to keep stories like this alive. And right before the ending, I have a special request. Please comment below with one word that describes what this story made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. Today, when I look at Margaret, I don't see a CEO or an age or a title. I see a woman who taught me that love isn't about timing according to the world, but about courage according to the soul. Our story didn't fix everything, and it didn't erase the scars. It simply proved that even in places built for profit and power, the human heart can still find room to bloom. If you're listening from somewhere in the United States or anywhere else, carrying a quiet hope you've been told is unrealistic, let this be your reminder. Love doesn't ask for permission. It just asks you to be brave enough to believe.